Hello, welcome to Story Time. If you're unfamiliar, if you're just joining me via YouTube for the first time, this is a little feature where I read some chapters of a book that I'm reading recently. This one was given to me free, the perks of being a former Bucko beat reporter, by Dave Jordan, the co-author with Dave Parker of Dave Parker's autobiography entitled Cobra, A Life of Baseball and Brotherhood. So I've read a few on my Facebook page so far, read a few chapters, that is, and now I want to get to the Cobra's rise through the Pirates' loaded minor league system in the early 1970s. Not an easy task, even for a guy as talented and, definitely on a fast track, as fast as it could be in that days as Dave Parker. So here's chapter 6, called Gotta Get Over the Hump. And this is from Rennie Stennett, the former Pittsburgh Pirate and teammate of Dave Parker at times throughout their minor league careers too. Stennett relates, in those early days, we played a lot of pranks on each other. Nobody was left out. Manny Sanguillen came into the clubhouse one day and found his locker filled from top to bottom with bananas. We were all sitting there, me, Willie, Roberto, Jose Pagan, just laughing at him. Manny looked to Roberto, who was laughing just as loud. Manny just nodded, said, okay, and left the clubhouse, waiting for his time to get even. Willie pranked Manny, Manny pranked Roberto, and they all pranked me, the rookie. This was the world Dave Parker was about to enter. And now on to Dave Parker's words, again, as told via his co-author, Dave Jordan. Salem, the contract I received at home from the Pirates that winter didn't say Pittsburgh, didn't say Charleston, or even Sherbrooke, the organization's AA affiliate. I was set to remain in A-ball. Maybe it was the high A-ball, but it was still in the sticks. Reese was with me in the family room that Saturday watching cartoons when the mail arrived. She was over 2 years old now and still didn't understand why Daddy was hardly around, but we made the most of those moments when we were together. Mama and Dad didn't really interfere with my baseball situation, and besides, there wasn't much I could do about it. With their World Series championship, the Pirates didn't make many moves in the offseason. No major trades, no established veterans offered an invitation to spring training. The newspapers at the time were saying as few as 2 roster spots were available in 1972. Danny Murtaugh always said the right thing, that every position was open. Got to keep the kids motivated and your everyday players on their toes. The outfield was Stargell, who was second in the MVP voting in 71. He was in left. Scoop Oliver was in center, finally given a set position rather than the outfield first base shuffle, and of course Roberto Clemente was in right. Sanguillen was becoming one of the best hitting catchers in baseball. Big Bob Robertson was a postseason hero. First base was definitely his. Richie Hebner was our third baseman, and Dave Cash, old AC, was finally the everyday second baseman, but he was hearing footsteps from the rookie Rennie Stennett. My boy had an 18-game hitting streak in September of 71, but was left off the postseason roster. Rennie had proven everything he needed to in the farms. Shortstop was supposed to be Gene Alley's at the time. He'd been there for years, but he just couldn't stay healthy. The position was a toss-up between Gene and Jackie Hernandez, though neither of them hit very much. Danny thought about trying Rennie there. The only one left out of the equation was Maz, who was now 35 years old. Affection for long-term players aside, it was obvious to all that this was Mazeroski's final year. The pitching staff was basically set: Doc, Blass, Nellie Briles, Bob Johnson, and Luke Walker, with maybe Doc's boy Bob Moose and Bruce Keeson for long relief and spot starting. Dave Justy, Bob Miller, and Ramon Hernandez were the main men in the pen, with veteran Bob Veal now on the roster bubble. The Pirates loved Milt May and were hoping he'd develop into an incredible catcher, so his second-string spot was secure. Vic DeVillo was an expert pinch hitter and could catch a ball in the outfield. He wasn't going anywhere. Truthfully, in my heart, there was only one dude who I needed to outperform if I had any chance of making the ball club: Zisk. We all called him Polacco. Zisk was becoming the prized prospect in the organization, just about all of baseball, really. He hit about 30 homers and close to 110 RBIs piled up for AAA Charleston. I kept thinking to myself, I'm going to be pissed off if I don't make the team, but what's Rich going to be thinking if his ass gets sent down to West Virginia again? That was the thing about the Pirates organization. In that moment, they didn't need to trade for anything. Most of their farm teams were developing numerous major league caliber players. I'm sure Joe Brown was taking calls from the other clubs, but he didn't have to make any moves. Bob Robertson gets hurt, Scoop moves to first, and Kleins plays center. Even if they lost 2 starting outfielders, Kleins and Davalillo could fill in. Then maybe they'd think about bringing Zisk up to the majors. Or maybe someone like me. Or someone like Ed Ott, another solid prospect. You still have my man Satch, or Larry Smith, or Dick Sharon for his fundamental play, or Zellman for his home run hitting ability, or that other guy, Omar Moreno, for his blazing speed. Holy Moses, there were like 15 major league caliber dudes fighting for a roster spot that probably didn't even exist in the first place. Man, it was getting depressing after a while just thinking about it. Played a lot of James Brown on the drive down to clear my soul. A little escapism was necessary if I was to be of use to anyone. It was only like 55 to 60 degrees by the time I arrived in Bradenton, so I wasn't too overheated in my winter clothes, but I was glad to finally enter my dorm room at Pirate City. My man was in there waiting for me. Salem, Satch said with a laugh. I simply nodded with a shrug and a resigned expression. Satch still got off the bed and greeted me with some five and a hug. We caught up for a little while, and I put my stuff away when Larry Smith walked through the door. Which one of you suckers is joining me in Sherbrooke? They put you in Double-A? I asked. At least that's where I'm starting from. Later in the early evening, me and Satch caught up with the rest of the fellows in the rec room to see what team was designated on their contracts. I found out that Ott was coming with us to Salem. So was Sadowski, the pitcher. Doug Bear, another promising right-hander. One of the better infielders in the rookie league, this feisty white kid named Terry Collins, was earmarked for Salem too. It occurred to Satch and me that the Pirates play so many talented ball players on the high A team. The next day, I was introduced to the reason. One of the coaches at Pirate City was named Tim Murtaugh. Yeah, that Murtaugh, Danny's son. Tim became manager of the Salem affiliate, and the organization stacked that ball club with as many ringers as possible. Tim was a more modern version of Danny. You talked to him, and he'd listen. The next day, either he followed through on your suggestion, or if he didn't, he sure explained why. Timmy was a young guy as far as managers go, maybe not even 30 years old. He carried himself with the confidence of a favorite organization man, but without the arrogance afforded to that position. I was still gunning for outperforming Zisk, but deep down, I knew I'd be just fine playing for Timmy. It was a week of normal workouts like the past 2 seasons. Sprints, time tests against other players, showing off my speed against Omar Moreno and the rest. The difference was the manager. Danny Murtaugh was the Pittsburgh Pirates skipper off and on since 1957. He stepped down after the team won the series in 71. He had some heart problems. But you see, he was Joe Brown's best friend. I mean, best friend. Joe didn't make a move without talking to Danny. And everyone loved Danny, the players, the announcers, the fans. Danny was great because he didn't treat the clubhouse boy like he was the clubhouse boy. He was known for his patience with young players and for giving veterans their space. I was sad when I found out Danny wouldn't be my manager in 72. I had some experience with Bill Verdon, Danny's hand-picked replacement at spring training the year before. He often helped me during outfield drills. Verdon was the one who improved my footwork when throwing to the cutoff man. He was patient, he was smart, and just like Timmy Murtaugh, Verdon was there to help shape me into a quality defensive center fielder. It wasn't his nature to compliment, but when he did give me that slow head nod as he stepped away, I knew I made him proud. You know how they say, you never want to be the guy who replaces the legend? That was Verdon, the exact opposite of Danny. Bill was a military man, but also a dependable Pirates outfielder for most of Murtaugh's time as manager. As a coach, the fans in the club liked Verdon all right, but he wasn't Danny. And worse, he wasn't much older than some of the guys on the roster. Verdon ended his playing career in 1968, only 2 years before I was drafted. He spent a lot of time working with Zisk in the outfield. Richie certainly wouldn't be playing right field, and he wasn't a candidate for center either. So who was in left field? Stargell, who underwent knee surgery after the World Series, just about a season and a half of playing on the artificial turf at Three Rivers, having taken its toll. Guys were already starting to make remarks about the playing surface. Will never whined or complained, but it was clear that the fake turf was not for everyone. On the other hand, Will didn't really want to play first base. He loved left field. That was his position, and the organization adored Bob Robertson. This was where the Pirates' multi-year first base slash outfield shuttle began to take shape. It was another spring of post-workout running around led by Doc and Moosey, stopping off for that awful Maryland fried chicken, but having great times with my teammates. One Tuesday evening, a bunch of the fellows were heading over to the Blue Lantern Bar. I found Bob Veal, whom we called Putney, sitting by himself in the rec room reading a magazine. "Hey, Putney," I said, walking over, "why don't you come out with me and the boys tonight?" With his round eyeglasses and tall, bulky frame, Veal looked like some kind of urban high school history teacher who also coached the basketball team and didn't take crap from no one. He kind of kept to himself unless someone in the clubhouse was mouthing off, in which case he set him straight. Veal was like the sheriff of that Pirates clubhouse. Old Putney smiled at my invitation, but his body language made it clear he was declining. "My wallet has an expiration date, boy," Veal laughed. "Don't know how many more days I got here. Can't be throwing my dollars away on forgetful nights." I nodded and made a remark that the invitation was open. Veal was a legend in my eyes. "Don't be getting in no trouble out there," he said. "The man is looking for a reason to show his power." I offered Veal my hand and said, "Times a changin', Putney," as he slapped me 5. "You hear what I'm saying?" he said. I nodded and left the room. It actually felt good to hear Veal verbally looking out for me, even if I didn't listen. The Blue Lantern was filled with pirates when Satch and I walked in. More than a few ladies in there to look at. Doc held court alongside Moosey, standing at the bar with a bunch of the fellas. Satch wasn't much of a drinker, but man, I was kind of thirsty. "If I wasn't with Paula, I'd be with you boys in the rooms," Doc said, with a cool in his hand. Dog Shit Motel and some of the other guys are tinning their ass on the beach. They ain't even opened the pool yet. Moose tried to reason with Doc. "It's still cold out." "That ain't the point, man. I deserve better. We all deserve better." About an hour later, Manny Sanguien and Rennie Stinnett entered the bar. As for Doc, well, Doc just loved an audience. Sangy didn't seem to be his usual joyful self. Doc nudged Sangy to talk after like 30 minutes. "They no let me get beach house," Sangy shrugged. "What beach house?" "They no rent me house on the island." Sangy was referring to Holmes Beach on Anna Maria Island, a sliver of land about 10 to 15 miles west of Pirate City. It was considered one of the more exclusive sections of the Bradenton area. Sangy explained how the woman who managed the seasonal rentals refused his money, even though there were many bungalows still available. Doc, who made headlines during the 1971 postseason by complaining about the Pirates' accommodations in San Francisco during the NLCS, was primed for a charged situation like this. Doc downed his drink and nodded to the door. "Let's go," Doc said, leading Sangy toward the exit. "We gotta get Tom to take care of this shit." The bartender tried to grab Doc's attention about the bill, but Doc waved behind his head. "Where else am I going, brother?" Moosey dropped some dollars on the bar to settle the bill before running out behind Doc and Sangy. "Who's Tom?" Satch asked, to no one in particular. Rennie laughed and said, "Agint," in his deep accent, staying behind with us at the bar. "What's that?" I said. "Agint, the man who gets us the money." "You mean agent?" Satch asked. It was the first time any of us prospects had heard of the idea. The next morning, I came down for early breakfast. I sat and ate with Satch, Larry, and Mello. I looked through all the tables, all the prospects, Omar, Ed Ott, Tavares, and then it hit me. "Hey, you boys see Zell?" I asked the group. Most of the fellows really only knew Zellman from Pirate City. Satch had no idea, and neither did Larry and Mello. Others were noticeably quiet. I knew who would know, but I dropped it until we finished eating. Walking out to the field, I ran up to Charlie Boo. "Hey, Boo, where's Z?" All the life quickly drained from Charlie's face. "I don't want to talk about it," Charlie mumbled, not really stopping to engage me. "What's that?" "I said I don't want to talk about it, okay?" Charlie Boo didn't snap at me, but he made it clear that this wasn't something to bring up right before workouts. I probably could have asked Dick Sharon since we were all on the team together up at Waterbury, but if Charlie Boo gave me that reaction and I was real close with him, I didn't know how Dick would respond. So I dropped it. Later that afternoon, I was in batting practice, swatting balls across the field. From 400 feet away, you could hear the sharp, repeated echo of the chain-link fences absorbing the blows of my hits. Homer, homer, probable double, probable triple, homer, homer, homer. I turned around when my session was complete to the smiling face of Roberto, surrounded by a collection of beat reporters. Clemente expressed his appreciation of my effort, and then he waved AC into the batter's box before laughing to the beat boys. "Do you think I'm going to follow that?" Roberto's graciousness with me set a tone I'd never forget. After our workouts were complete, me and Satch were walking through the complex toward the lobby elevators leading to my dorm room. We noticed this medium-height dude in his early 30s wearing thick black eyeglasses and the biggest white man afro I'd ever seen, dressed in a collared business shirt and light trousers, talking with Sangy and Doc. He handed each of them separate sets of keys, along with a small sack. "Those are for the other guys," Tom Reich said. "Don't lose them." Doc gave Tom an upright wrist handshake and a half hug. He always seemed to be hanging around Pirate City back then. Had me wondering what Tom's deal was. Verdon didn't allow for pitchers to throw funky stuff at us during the intra-squad games. I faced Steve Blass, Nellie Briles, Justy, Veal, and I knew what was coming, so I went 6 for 11 in the practice games. The other prospect who approached those numbers? Yep, Richie Zisk. The reporters started writing about the difficulty the Pirates could have keeping fellows like us in the minors. It was time to show up in the exhibition showcases. We were playing the Mets at their St. Petersburg complex. I started the game in left field. New York was up 3-2 going to the 8th inning. There was this prospect for the Mets, Dennis Saunders, on the mound. Big righty, like 6'3". He managed to get 2 outs through a Gene Klein single and a Vic Davalillo walk. Then Verdon sent Zisk up to pinch hit, for the pitcher. Richie zapped this liner to left center for a double. Vic was stopped at third by a strong throw from the rookie left fielder, this dude named John Milner. I was watching Saunders from the on-deck circle. I was thinking in my head, this cat's struggling for a spot. He needs this game. I needed to keep pace with Zisk. I stepped in and waggled that bat. Saunders delivered, and I torched that thing to deep right. I could feel the reporters watching me motor around those bases. Stand-up triple, 2 runs scored. I made my point. The previous spring, Pittsburgh played a goodwill series in Panama. In '72, the organization sent the team to Venezuela, not to go against a local ball club, but to play the Cincinnati Reds, my hometown team. I was determined to be on that bus to the airport. A couple of nights before the trip, I was playing basketball in the projects down the street from the Blue Lantern. When the bar was empty, we'd roll over to the courts near the apartments. At 10 p.m. on most nights, you could find a nice crowd of ladies hanging out. So me, Larry, who could ball real good too, and a few of the other fellas jumped into a game. Again, we respected the locals' turf, but we didn't play so easy that we came off like we were letting them win. Afterward, me and Larry were heading home in the Grand Prix. I'm going to Venezuela, I declared. Larry laughed. You're being a fool, man, Larry replied through his chuckle. They ain't taking you. All those writers are talking about me, I said. They got to show me off. Don't get your hopes up. Ain't your time yet, Larry replied. The next day, the Pirates contacted the players who were scheduled to go. I was working out in defensive drills next to Larry and Satch when I saw the bus pull up the road behind the fields. A few of the fellas trickled out of the complex with their luggage. Sangy, Robertson, Dave Justy, Scoop, Zisk. Larry saw what I saw. He was chill about being right, just throwing me a don't worry about it shrug. I was pissed that I didn't get to go on this trip because now my parents wouldn't get to read about me in the Cincinnati Enquirer, maybe hear my name spoken on a local TV sports report. But that wasn't all. Just like last season with the Panama trip, if you weren't on that bus and you weren't hurt like Willie or trying to rehab like Maz, it only meant one thing: demotion. You did everything we asked, and we thank you for your efforts. This was how I was told I was heading back to the minors. It wasn't even the manager who told me. Verdon had the farm director, Harding Pete Peterson, break the news. Pete was all business, but I saw him interact with the guys on the big club. He seemed like a decent enough fella, but I wasn't at the level to receive that warm affection yet. I hit over 400 in the spring training games, and I was hitting better than Zisk. They hadn't sent him down yet. I politely shook Pete's hand and left his office, and I grabbed a pop in the cafeteria. Sometimes when I'm upset, I can wear it on my face. Maybe this was one of those times. Hey, Dave. I turned around to find Danny Murtaugh standing behind me. I almost didn't recognize him out of uniform, in civilian clothes. Danny's expression gave me license to admit my feelings about being demoted. Then he smiled and touched my shoulder. You were better than players on most of the other teams, but you know what organization you play for, right? You will be a Pirate someday, just not today. Danny's affectionate back tap gave me reassurance that I was on the right path. I returned to my dorm room and saw the long faces of Satch, Larry, Mello, and many other fellows on our floor. The silver lining to my situation was voiced by Satch after minutes of depressed silence. At least I get to go to the minor leagues in style this season, Satch said with a laugh. He extended his hand for a slap. For the first time, I'd be playing minor league baseball with someone I consider to be a very close friend. Bob Veal was named the 10th pitcher on the staff after Maz went on the 21-day disabled list. Dick Sharon would end up at Charleston alongside Zisk, who once again was also demoted, the last guy cut in camp. Everyone was talking about Zisk's situation. He would have been starting for like 6 major league ball clubs at that point, teams like the Phillies, the White Sox, the Twins, the Rangers, and could have challenged the Vets on a handful of others too. He had a great spring, so as pissed as I was, I couldn't imagine his anger. Both Sharon and Richie would join Frankie Tavares, Art Howe, and Charlie Sands in AAA, along with, sadly, Charlie Boo, who, going on 29 years old, would be entering his 10th minor league season. Still no word about what happened to Zellman, though. About 10 days later, me and Satch loaded up the Grand Prix for our half-day drive up to Salem. Standing in front of the Pirate City complex, I was still mad because it was real. I was headed to the minors again. Next time I leave this joint, my ass will be sitting on a jet plane, I said. Satch just shook his head and grinned, trying to get me in the right frame of mind. Come on, Park, let's go tear up that league. And off we went for the 1972 season. Satch and me with Sly Stone consoling us through the 8-track on a 12-hour loop. Boom shakalaka laka, boom shakalaka laka. I was so furious once we arrived in Salem. The town had a population of around 21,000 or so back then, about twice the size of Monroe, and maybe less than a quarter of Waterbury, where I started the previous minor league season. There really wasn't much to do in Salem except go to Municipal Stadium. Seemed like there was a Municipal stadium in every town, and watched the Pirates. The Pittsburgh organization had a love-hate relationship with Salem, moving back and forth several times over the years, first from 1957 to 59, and then returning in 1964. It was much like the classic ballparks in baseball history, 329 feet down the lines and really deep in center. Huge scoreboard in left field, like a smaller scale green monster. The lighting was terrible. Just about every fly ball during night games was an adventure, and Tim Murtaugh made every effort to turn me into a center fielder. Otter was in right, and most nights, Satch played left, with an occasional start at first base. My head wasn't into the first 10 to 15 games, still angry about the demotion. High A pitching was similar to the Western Carolinas League at Monroe when I was tearing it up. In my first 79 at-bats, I was hitting 190 with barely 10 RBIs. I was miserable. Me and Satch moved into an apartment complex in Roanoke, about 25 minutes from the ballpark. There was much more to do in a city with a population of over 4 times that of Salem. More restaurants, more quick food places, Bob's Big Boy, Shoney's, joints like that. Satch was newly married, and his bride was going to move in with him around June. So we spent lots of time together off the field until then. Really not much chasing on my part, and none on his. Satch convinced me to go to this amusement park in town after a day game in May. My average was still somewhere in the 210s, so we thought cotton candy and a wooden roller coaster might be the best medicine. Of course, all that did was give me indigestion and a near heart attack. I almost pulled old Satch out of the chair. Yeah, we only did that once. I don't remember much about the circumstances, but early in the season, Otter ended up crashing with us one night. It was late. I gave Eddie a pillow and blanket and then went to my room. I couldn't sleep, so I sat up in bed, lit a cool, and turned on the record player to hear some Marvin. Bad breaks, setbacks. I tried to keep calm about my early slump, not letting memories of Waterbury seep into my psyche. Last thing I wanted was the organization shipping my ass backward again. There was just way too much talent around me. The whole situation just made me want to holler. About a half hour later, Otter burst into my room and did the hollering for me. I smell smoke, Otter said, all sorts of fired up, until he saw the incense burning on my night table. His mind was blown. What the hell are you doing? He said. Hanging out, man, I replied in an easygoing manner. You don't dig it? No, I don't dig it, he said. You scared me half to death. Then Satch came into my room, barely awake. What's the matter? Satch said to both of us. Parker's trying to burn the place down, Otter replied, pointing to my controlled smoke. Satch looked at me and then recognized the incense. Oh, that, yeah, he's just hanging out, Satch said through a yawn, like it was nothing. Go back to bed. Otter, God love him, although that was the last time we ever bunked together. I wasn't certain anything was going to snap me out of this funk. On Saturdays before night games, me and Satch grabbed breakfast at the Waffle House. We get back to the apartment and just cool out, watching this new TV show called Soul Train. The program became an iconic piece of television history, but back then it was our American Bandstand. Dancing couples, new record releases, the exact same format. And we loved it, especially that Soul Train line. That was a trip. Catching the show every Saturday when we were at home became our weekend must-see TV. Excuse me. I remember one afternoon we were at our place before a game against the Rocky Mount Leafs. We were sitting there watching the show. Satch came out of the kitchen area after grabbing a couple of cheap beers. I know you're angry that you're down here, but you ain't going anywhere until you start hitting, he said. I knew Satch's words were coming from a concerned heart, so it didn't bother me. You don't have to worry about me, brother, I said, with my eyes fixated on the TV. My ass is going to be fine. I know where you want to go. You ain't going to get there hitting 230, he said. Son, when we get home from the next trip, I'm going to be over 300. I promise you that shit. Yeah, believe it when I see it, he said. I remember one of those Soul Train episodes. They had this act, Simtek and Wiley, with a song called Gotta Get Over the Hump. I had heard it a few times on the radio a year or so earlier and liked it, but I had forgotten about it until they played it again on Soul Train. Satch was right. The song was right. If I ever wanted to wear a Pittsburgh uniform, I had best start performing at the plate. That road trip, I stopped thinking about Three Rivers and started thinking about the Lynchburg Twins, the Kingston Eagles, the Winston-Salem Red Sox, the Rocky Mount Leafs, and our rivals, the Burlington Rangers. Over my next 146 at-bats, my homers went from 0 to 9, my RBIs from 11 to 46, and my average from 190 to 334. It became a fight between Salem and Burlington for the lead in the Carolina League. I joined the leaders in nearly every offensive category. I didn't make any adjustments to my swing, didn't act any nicer to the umpires, didn't change my footwork, just my attitude. I remember one Saturday about a month later, well into my hot streak, I picked up the bill at the Waffle House. What's that for? Satch asked as I motioned to the waitress for the check. I just shrugged and handed over a few dollars for our food. It was a small gesture, but his encouragement back then meant a lot to me. Who knows? A little bit of Soul Train and a little bit of Satch might have saved my career. The clubhouse at Salem Municipal Stadium wasn't all that. Small locker spaces, no chairs to sit down, a funky brown couch. We were still a pretty tight group. Our shortstop that year was this Mexican kid named Mario Mendoza, close to 6 feet tall, but real thin. He didn't talk much, so I tried to get him out of his shell. One day, I walked by his locker and started shadow boxing. Come on, Mex, I laughed, dancing and throwing air punches. Let's go, son. He really didn't want to, until finally I coaxed him into facing off in the middle of the clubhouse. Me with all the smack talk, and Mario, stone cold silent, like Kane in Kung Fu. Let's go, Mex. You want a whooping? Come on, you want a whooping, don't you? Mendoza wheeled this leg spin move out of nowhere, a precise elite-level karate kick, and he missed my nose by inches. It was clear that Mario had such control over his mechanism that he could have knocked my damn teeth out if he wanted to. I was shocked by the kid's form. It was exquisite. He just quietly stopped and stepped back to his locker, eyeballing me the whole time. I learned real quick that the true Mendoza line was wherever the hell he wanted it to be. Just about every memoir of a black man or woman from my generation describes at least one racial incident. The good social fortune I enjoyed in my early life meant that I didn't overtly experience many until 1972. Growing up, besides Crosley Field, we really kept to our own slice of Cincinnati. I stayed out of certain parts of Florida during spring training. Waterbury was just me on the road in the Northeast for a couple of months, and I was too busy rebuilding my rep down in Monroe to notice any petty racial slights. But the Carolina League certainly had its reminder moments. We were playing a game at Rocky Mount against the Leafs. They weren't a great ball club. Maybe fewer than 6 of their players ever made it in a major league game. We were beating them pretty badly. Otter got a couple of hits. Terry Collins went 3 for 3. Satch hit a homer. I went up to bat late in the game, and the fans started, how shall we say, racially booing. Brother this and brother that, but they weren't saying brother. It was maybe the third pitcher of the game. I knew he was overmatched, and yet he tried to blow one by me. First pitch, I hit that mother straight into the wooden bleachers in right field. I rounded the bases with a much slower jog to allow the fans to enjoy the moment. Epithets rained down on me. You're still a no-good brother, quote-unquote. Go back to where you came from. Oh, they were getting verbally creative on me, and all that did was fuel me more. I kept quiet, jogged the bases, crossed home plate, and walked slowly to the dugout, like it was nothing, and it was nothing. Another time after a day game, me and Satch were walking through Salem with Terry Collins, that feisty, skinny kid from up north. We just wanted a quick meal without going all the way back to Roanoke. As we made our way through town, these young men, they were both actually pretty tall, sitting outside a general store, yelled over, "You two don't belong here." I wasn't in the mood for a fight, and neither was Satch, but that didn't stop Terry. What the hell does that mean? Old Collins got right in their faces. I'm from Michigan, he said. People don't talk to other people like that. I ain't talking to you. We're talking to Leroy over there. Back then, Leroy was the name racists used when they were tired of the N-word. You're talking to me now, and if I ever, said Collins. At this point, Satch quietly dragged Terry away from the guys. Collins sure had some balls on him. What a good dude. And then another time, me and Satch were watching the dating game in the apartment before a weeknight series against Kingston. He told me a story involving him and Sadowski. So the other day, he said, I'm out with Ski at that place in Salem everyone goes to. All the other guys in the team bragged about how good the food and the service was. I never thought about it, but it was only the white guys who talked about it. Sadowski don't know any better. He's from Pennsylvania. We go sit down. Sadowski is so excited to finally eat here. The waiter comes to the table and says, we can't serve him. Sadowski's all, excuse me? The waiter gives Sadowski this look like, do I have to say it? So Sadowski puts down the menu, stands up, and says, we're leaving. And we got up and grabbed the burger somewhere else. Once we walked out, Dave, I gave Sadowski a hug. He didn't have to do all that. Sadowski's all right, I told Satch. Yeah, we were a strong group in Salem, fighting for first place, and it was about to get even better. Maybe a week later, I was getting ready for a home game against Burlington when I saw this dude standing at the edge of our manager's office. He had a couple of bags at his side. I nudged Satch, who was lacing his spikes on a stool, and nodded toward that cat. About 5'10", maybe 5'11", thin, an afro that could make Oscar Gamble jealous. Larry? Satch asked in a whisper. Yo, Smith, I yelled over. Larry turned around and approached us. He was pretty depressed. Me and Satch welcomed him with 5 slaps and hugs. Larry was going through a tough time in Double-A ball, hitting around 240 to 245 and not getting on the field much anyway, which messed with his rhythm. We didn't have to ask him what happened. The Daves are getting all the damn playing time, Larry complained. And then they're moving Mello between first and left. I just couldn't get going. You'll stay at my place, I told him. After Satch's wife moved down to Salem, he didn't swing by as much, so I welcomed the company, even if Larry was beaten up about the demotion. So that following Saturday afternoon, before a home game against the Lynchburg Twins, Larry was sitting on our couch, smoking a cigarette and watching Soul Train with me, still out of sorts about being back in single A. Satch came over. "Come on, fellas, let's go," Satch said. "Nah, we got time," I said, my eyes glued to the TV. "Don't you got to buy groceries or something with your old lady?" Larry snapped without looking over. "You know why you're in Salem, don't you?" Satch explained. "Sherbrooke's in first place. They're going to run away with it. We're fighting with Burlington. Pirates want to see Danny's kid get a championship. They're stacking the deck. We need you to win this thing, brother." I knew just the trick to snap Larry out of it. "There's a pool hall on the other side of town. Want to try to whip my ass again, sucker?" Larry finally smiled and nodded, and we were ready to roll. Mid-June in Rocky Mount, we were down 4-2 in the sixth inning when Tim brought in Sadowski. Old Ski kept us in the game for 3 innings. I got up in the seventh and lined a double to right center. Rocky Mount tried to get cute by bringing in a southpaw to face the lefty swinging Otter, who quickly smacked a triple down the right field line. Then Satch came up and dropped a single into right center. The rattled cat on the mound walked Larry and gave up another single, and then Sadowski came to bat. He walked the pitcher. We took the series, and we were on our way. That was the formula. Sadowski came in for long relief and kept it close. Larry got on base, Otter smacked a clutch hit, and then me and Satch provided the power. I can't tell you how many games we won like that over the summer. I never had so much fun playing ball. Dinners with Larry, Satch, and his wife when we were home. Hamburgers on the road with my boys. Getting loud in the clubhouse, singing songs at the highest decibels until old Otter was like, "Parker, enough." I used to get Eddie all worked up and then see him take it out on the Carolina League. He had a great season, batting over 300, his on-base average over 400, playing a solid outfield with one of the best arms at that level. As for me, I was still learning. I could hear the manager and coaches talking about my defense that year. It was like that baseball movie. 20 errors, league leader. 20 assists, also league leader. All the talk was about my arm. Oughts, too. No runners were taking chances against our outfield, and once Larry came in with his blazing speed, that was that. Very quietly, Satch was having an MVP-level season. In late August, we were sitting in the clubhouse looking at a copy of the Sporting News, which at the time contained minor league stats, too. "Wait a minute," Satch said to me and Larry, who was doing his hair. "I'm hitting .320. I could win the batting title." "How's that possible when I'm winning the Triple Crown?" I joked. "You ain't winning no Triple Crown," Larry snapped, looking at himself in the mirror. "That white dude on the Twins is getting home runs." Larry was talking about Bob Gorinsky, who challenged me back in the rookie league for the home run title. He was still blasting moonshots, trying to make it to the majors. But Satch was having a dream season. I was putting up top numbers, and Larry was hitting over 300. We were the well-oiled machine of the Carolina League. By the time the season ended, we had 2 starters with over 15 wins. Dougie Bear was 15-7 with close to 190 strikeouts. Big Jim Minchell, our stopper, finished with a 16-1 record. By the time September rolled around, we found ourselves fighting for the title with the first-half champs, the Burlington Rangers. The Carolina League playoff structure was similar to the Majors' strike season in 1981. First-half champions played the best second-half team in a 2-out-of-3 series. The Rangers team presented some challenges for us. A guy named Mike Cubbage always seemed to be on base. A clutch hitter named Dane Jorg always seemed to come through against us. And the most lights-out bullpen guy in the league, Steve Foucault. Check this out. An ERA under .5, 55 strikeouts in 40 innings, 7 relief wins, no losses. Our biggest fear, if we had one, was going into the 7th inning in any of the championship games and seeing Foucault walking toward the mound. The thing with the minors is that you can turn around and find the guy who is so good can be snatched by the big club at a moment's notice. The Rangers organization pulled Foucault and put him in AAA for the rest of the season. The Burlington team not having Foucault would definitely make some sort of difference. The first game of the championship series was a tough one. This guy for the Rangers, Erskine Thomason, really had our number. He fanned like 14 of us over 8 innings. I couldn't touch him, and Satch wore the sombrero. Larry kept us in the game, though. He went 3 for 4 with a stolen base. We were all tied in the 8th inning when Larry and Terry Collins singled. I smacked a line drive to center field. Our third base coach sent Larry home, knowing the Rangers center fielder needed to throw a strike. He threw a strike. We lost in 11 innings. John Moreland pitched his heart out to keep us in that series. Our backs were against the wall, but we had our ace Dougie Bear on the mound for us for game 2. It was a 1-1 tie going into the 10th inning when Mario Mendoza hit a pop fly that the Burlington center fielder lost in the lights and then overthrew second base, putting Mario on third. Timmy made an interesting decision to have Dougie, the pitcher, bat for himself in the 10th inning. Guess what? Dougie walked. Then Larry came up and hit a long drive to right center. Sac fly. Mario scored to win it. 2 extra inning games, pitchers going the distance. What a series. The third and final game of the championship was at our home ballpark. Satch, Larry, and I enjoyed one last breakfast at the Waffle House that morning. I was never the nostalgic type, but damn, did I have a time with these fellows in 72. I wanted it to end, of course. I wanted to be in Pittsburgh, but man. The Rangers got off to a 2-0 lead. I came up in the bottom of the fourth and launched a double off the right field wall. Ott came up next and slashed what we all thought was a triple, but the Burlington first baseman claimed Eddie didn't touch the bat. Somehow the ump agreed and called Otter out to end the inning, which led to a long argument with Tim, Ott, and the ump. Luckily, I scored first to get us within 1. Burlington increased the lead to 4-1 when Cubbage and another one of their guys, Greg Pryor, swatted clutch hits to score 2 more runs. The Rangers were feeling real good about themselves then. Burlington starting pitcher Steve Fuller was a knuckleball specialist. In the 6th, with a 3-run lead, Fuller walked Larry. With 1 out, Larry was dancing off first base, threatening to steal. With his attention diverted, Fuller tossed me the sweetest knuckler I'd ever seen, and man, was I waiting for that one. I might have hit that funky pitch 500 feet over the right field fence. It was 4-3, and now we had him where we wanted him. Timmy brought in Sadowski during the top of the 7th to stop a threat. Old Ski kept it close, so the boys in our lineup could do their thing. Bottom of the 7th, Mario, who was having the series of his life, started things off with a single. Sadowski hit for himself. Damn, Timmy kept doubling down against conventional managerial wisdom, pure ballsy gut calls, and he laid down a sweet bunt, did Sadowski, moving Mendoza to second. Then Larry stepped up, and my man smacked a single to right, scoring Mario. Tie game, and we weren't done yet. The Rangers brought in another pitcher to face Terry Collins, who worked out a walk. Eddie stepped up to the plate and showed why he was one of the organization's top prospects. Otter smashed a screaming liner through the middle that the Burlington center fielder couldn't handle. Terry scored. Now we had the lead. Up stepped Satch. One more time, big man. My boy drilled a double in the left field corner to score Ott, and it was 6-4 Salem. When Burlington made the final out, it was fitting that we were all on the field to celebrate. Satch running over from first to jump on Sadowski right off the mound. Terry Collins and Mendoza jogging in unison from the second base area to join in. Larry, Ott, and I eagerly trotting from the outfield to embrace the celebration. We poured cheap champagne and beer all over each other in the locker room. The shouting, the hugging, this was the life I always dreamed of. I got my first sip of a championship beverage, and it was the most amazing night of my baseball career. Correction, my sports career. Later on, I went into Tim's office to thank him for an amazing season. Sure, there was talk that Tim was given great players because he was Murtaugh's son, but Denny wasn't in that dugout for the second game. And Danny didn't make the snap decisions to keep strong pitchers like Bear and Sadowski in the game. Timmy managed brilliantly, and I wanted him to know that. Murtaugh graciously accepted my appreciation. Oh, by the way, he said, you're not going to the instructional league this year. What you say? I responded. Tough to hear over the voices of the celebrating fellows outside the office. Why was he telling me this? The front office has been thinking, he said. How good is your Spanish? Tim smiled. You're going to play with Aguilas in the Dominican Republic for winter ball. What? It's where we send all our top prospects. You're on your way, Parker. Great season. Then Tim gave me a strong hug and led me out of his office. In the end, our ball club swept so many honors. Satch, Ott, Dougie Bear, and I were named to the Carolina League All-Star team. I didn't get the Triple Crown, but I was named Player of the Year. Bear received the High A version of the Cy Young Award. Our team was just stacked. It wasn't even fair. I was blessed with such friendship, good times, and accolades for my efforts in 1972 that I almost didn't notice not getting a September call-up from the Pirates. Fernando Gonzalez, who hit .333 for AA Sherbrooke, was promoted in September. Catchers Chuck Goggin and Charlie Sands, too. Frank Tavares made the September team in case one of the shortstops got hurt again. Pitchers Jim McKee and Gene Garber joined the staff. And of course, the Pirates rewarded Richie Zisk for another awesome minor league season, which was expected. All of them got a sip of the division-clinching bubbly as the Pirates were heading to the postseason for a third consecutive year. Satch, Larry, and I hit the town after our game, crawling through a number of different bars and nightclubs all over Roanoke. Satch only drank a little, but me and Larry celebrated. At the final pool hall, Larry turned to me with a devilish grin. One more time, sucker, Larry said. Let's get it on, I replied. Of course, he whipped my ass. It was a great night. It was also the last night I ever saw Larry Smith again. I gave Satch the phone number at Mama's house. We made plans to try to get together before spring training, but y'all know how these things go. Funny how life is, the puzzle of our memories. Only a few things stick out clearly. We all know the Pirates won the NL East in '72 and were facing a rematch with Cincinnati to return to the Fall Classic. It was an underappreciated 5-game series, which ended when Johnny Bench smacked a home run to tie things up off Dave Justy in the 9th inning of Game 5, followed by Moosey's wild pitch that scored George Foster with the winning run for the Reds. It was a heartbreaker for the organization, and I was curious about the changes they believed would be necessary. Burton did a nice job getting the Buccos back to the postseason, but now the Reds were even more awesome than before with the addition of Joe Morgan to their lineup. There was no room for Foster in that outfield, but at some point, they need to find a spot for his talents. Funny little note on this series, Foster ended up patrolling the outfield with me in winter ball. I either saw the commercial on TV down in Aguilas or during a late December football game with my dad back at home a few days before New Year's, but I never forgot it. The ad showed all these young boys dressed in Little League uniforms sitting in the stands right off the field of a major league stadium. A voiceover praised baseball and its heroes. Young boys in Little League uniforms jumped out of their seats and running across the artificial turf to surround a big league icon who caught a fly ball and tossed it back to an unseen infielder before greeting the children quickly surrounding him. The player was Roberto Clemente. It was an Eastern Airlines commercial. Okay, looks like a shorter chapter coming up, maybe. Yeah, about 13 pages. So quick halftime brought to you by the folks at, Canada Dry. Sweating in here. I turn the AC on. Humidity is off the charts today. Okay, chapter 7, Brother, Brother, Brother. So me and Roberto were sitting in the dugout at McKechnie Field, watching our teammates play an exhibition game in '72. It was the late innings, so Verdon was playing most of the rookies. We watched Dave Parker make a running catch, and then he made this strong throw from center to home plate on a fly. Roberto pushed himself off the bench as he's laughing. I asked him what was funny. "That's my replacement out there," he said. "What are you talking about?" I laughed back. "He's not in your position." Roberto stopped laughing and just smiled as he walked past me. I know a right fielder when I see one. This was from Manny Sen-Guillen. And now back to Dave Parker. They can't find it. That's what Satch said to me on the phone, New Year's Day, 1973. Whenever there's a horrible accident or tragedy, and even if it's more search and recover than search and rescue, you never talk in terms of death. You never use that word until you absolutely know for sure. You cling to every possibility, every hope, that there's a chance things will be okay. Roberto was in a plane crash last night. They can't find anybody, Satch said. I was out that night with some of my boys in Cincinnati, celebrating the end of a great year and the joyous coming of a new one, I thought. This was going to be the year when I finally made the Pirates opening day roster. When I left Quarter Tech, I gave myself 3 years to make the bigs. I missed the Triple Crown by 1 home run for Salem. My dinger-hitting rival in the minors, Bob Gorinsky, got me by 1, 23-22. The reporters were calling me Pittsburgh's #1 prospect then. With everyone saying our outfield was the deepest in all of baseball, I knew competing with them might be tough, but I felt a world of confidence heading into the season. I batted .400 in the previous spring training, hit a couple of homers, a few doubles and triples. I recognized that exhibition games were just that, but it still fueled my ambitions. On January 1st, 1973, I put all that aside when I got that phone call from Satch. Roberto Clemente was more than a humanitarian, more than our spiritual team leader, more than a baseball angel. Roberto was our brother. I started getting phone calls from friends and family asking if I had heard what happened. Sometimes people want to connect with you over a tragedy, be there for you, and it's genuine and all, but sometimes you just need to sit down by yourself and process the event. My New Year's Day was like a blur. I couldn't enjoy spending time with my family, couldn't handle continued retelling of what I did and didn't know. I just didn't want to believe it. I tried to watch the Rose Bowl like I did every year with Dad to get some peace. I tried to think about Ohio State taking on USC. It always made me feel good watching the Buckeyes because for those few moments, I remembered I was really a football player. I missed that. My sister and Mama were making New Year's dinner while I was on the couch in the den watching the game. Every half hour, Mama checked up on me, trying to smile and understand what I was going through. But I just shook my head, and I was like, I'm okay. The rest of January was something like a daze to me, just trying to reconcile the tragic events of New Year's Eve. I spent as much time with Reese as I could because I knew I was going to be away for most of the year. She was growing up so beautifully. Deborah was really raising her so wonderfully. I brought Reese down to see Mrs. Kugel at Quarter Tech. I looked forward to that annual pilgrimage to my old high school, as it was a reminder of the expectations that were set for me in life. The month ended with the mail delivering the news I'd been working toward the last 3 seasons. My 1973 contract was with the Pittsburgh Pirates. I had made the 40-man roster. Joe Brown never considered going outside the organization to replace Roberto. The Pirates possessed the depth to absorb this loss on the field. I was trying to figure out exactly who that person would be that made most of the drama in spring training, 1973. Pittsburgh? That was the first thing Satch asked me when I walked in the dorm room down at Pirate City at the end of February. I smiled, nodded, and slapped him 5. Me too. Satch and I were officially in the mix for a role on the big league team. I didn't care about the living arrangements. I was happy to be bunking with my boys. I didn't care that all the Pirate outfielders hit over 372. In my mind, I wasn't going anywhere but Pittsburgh. I did my very best to get the feelings about Roberto behind me and to do the work that needed to be done. And then later, after our first workout, when I re-entered the complex, I saw Sangi choked up in the corner of the cafeteria, taking questions from a beat reporter. Roberto's death affected all of us, but Manny Sanguillen was closest to him. They used to sprint together during workouts. Roberto would playfully run behind Sangi, kidding him with jokes and mock motivational speech. Sangi spent winters playing ball with Clemente in Puerto Rico. When Roberto's plane went down, Sangi didn't accept it. He threw on scuba gear and went out with the search parties looking for Roberto's body. He spent a lot of time with Roberto's wife, Vera, and the boys, Roberto Jr., Luis, and Roberto Enrique. When Sangi entered Roberto's house after they stopped searching, little Luis greeted him with a frown, just saying, "Daddy gone." The loss hit Sangi more than anyone, and all throughout camp, a new beat reporter, some dude who just arrived from UPI or the Associated Press, would walk over to him on the field, in the dugouts, all over, these earnest writers eager to get a dramatic narrative. Sangi just wore this expression that cried out, "Not again." Sangi repeated the events of the tragedy every day for the first 2 weeks, until he just couldn't do it anymore. A lot of guys looked out for Sangi, not just because he was one of our leaders, but because he had another issue, a baseball issue, to deal with. Management was very high on catcher Milt May, a strong, capable receiver with a decent arm who hit 21 homers in AAA 2 years earlier. Joe Brown said he was the best number 2 catcher in the league, and the organization thought he could be a starter. So our manager, Bill Verdon, had the pressure to insert this 22-year-old into the lineup. Sangi was a 2-time All-Star behind the plate, a career 300 hitter to that point, the fastest catcher in baseball, and Verdon was being pushed to move Sangi to replace Roberto in right field. Now Bill Verdon, who was in his second year as manager, had his own political situation to deal with. The organization expected to return to the World Series, and after Cincinnati won the NLCS, there was increasing pressure for Bill to deliver another championship ring. The loss of Roberto made things that much harder on Verdon. He not only needed to figure out how to overtake the Reds, who were just getting stronger, but he needed to figure out right field, which everyone else had considered settled business before New Year's Eve. As a young outfielder trying to make the team, you can see where this was all headed. If Sangi played good in right field during spring training, I'd be getting sent down. If Milt May cruised as well, Sangi would be in right field, and I'd get sent down. So not only does Sangi have to answer every reporter's questions about his dead friend, but he must take Clemente's old position in the outfield and not look back. If Verdon, a former Gold Glover himself, can't turn Sangi into an adequate outfielder, it's his ass. And me? I played center all last year in the minors to get more balls hit at me and improve my fundamentals. Could I play center for Pittsburgh? Not with Scoop there. Still the hardest working guy on the roster, he had 312 and 600 plate appearances the year before. He wasn't going anywhere. And I haven't gotten to Gene Klein's yet. He led the team with a 334 batting average in 72. He was 20th place in the NL MVP voting, and they weren't even sure he had a starting spot because left field was being left open. The organization was trying to figure out that position. Stargell's knees were acting up again, and 2 full years on the artificial turf wasn't helping. Willie spent the second half of 72 at first when Bob Robertson fell into a slump. Verdon told all the beat guys that Stargell would be our first baseman, and with a good spring, Robertson would be the everyday left fielder, where he had played a total of 25 times in 5 years. And then there was Zisk, who only batted .308 and slammed 26 homers in AAA Charleston. He hit for average and for power, and management let the reporters assume Richie was definitely making the team. But what could they do with old Polacco? How long can you let a player of his caliber wait? Zisk was a pro and handled himself with a lot of class, but it was obvious to everyone involved that his patience was running low. So what did I do at the early workouts? Hell, I ran into the clubhouse to grab a first baseman's glove. It felt real good snapping my palm into the pocket, like a childhood catcher's mitt. I took some infield reps and played there in an intra-squad game until Verdon asked for the glove and pointed me to center field. Now, don't think I have any ill will toward Verdon. He helped shape me into the defensive outfielder I became. So as we entered our third day of workouts, I realized it was all about Milt May. Just like Verdon, Milt was a successor with pressure, attempting to fill Sangy's spikes behind the plate. But even young Milt knew the score. He even told some dude from the Tampa Times, I think this season is important for me because if I don't play well, I think I may be traded next year. Soon the guys from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette came to me, looking for a story. I said all the right things. I don't expect to make the club in spring training, and I should get a call in June or July. But they knew I didn't believe that. A reporter even wrote, however, the general manager concedes that Parker might force them to reconsider their plans. That was my goal, to get to the majors as quickly as possible, to get my chance to sip that good postseason drink, but more importantly, to be with my baseball brothers. So you can imagine there was a fair amount of pressure all across camp. Someone needed to step up and ease the tension. Satch, Mello, and I met up with the fellows of the Blue Lantern later that night. I found Doc and Moose at the bar with a young rookie prospect, a pitcher. I was so locked in on making the team when I first got down to Pirate City that I really didn't mingle much. I was looking forward to a night of chilling with the boys, and since Satch didn't really drink, I knew I could find a ride back. Moosey was still all broken up about his wild pitch in the 5th game of the NLCS the year before. He let his hair grow out, and I mean, it was an impressive afro at its peak. He was a dude crying in his beer when Doc just threw up his hands. Man, I don't want to hear that shit again, he told Moosey as he raised his screwdriver. It's over, a new year, and we go back at it. I was moved by how much Moosey took the loss to heart. I think I was staring intently at the two of them when the teenage pitcher stood up from his stool and introduced himself to me. Who you eyeballing, motherfucker? Larry DeMary said to me as he got up to go to the bathroom. I turned to Doc and started laughing with a what was that expression? Nah, that's just baby brother, Doc assured me. He's cool. That's just his way of saying, hello, Mr. Parker. It's a pleasure to meet you. Demery was like Doc, raised in Los Angeles. He didn't take crap from anybody. I remember people talking about some cat in the system who could throw vicious heat and made sure you knew he owned the inside of the plate. I ordered a screwdriver for myself and my new best friend when he came back from the can, offering him a welcoming smile, and everything was everything. We need to do something, Doc said. We're all on the beach now. Me, Will, Sangy, Moosey. The fellows need a good time. I'm going to talk to Stargell. We got to have you boys down in the sand with us. 1 week later, on the team's day off, there was a bang on my dorm door. It was Demery, handing me the directions. You're driving, he said. Me, Satch, Demery, and Mello jumped in the Pre and headed down to Anna Maria Island. Doc's agent, Tom Reich, managed to secure housing for him, Sangy, and some of the minority veterans on Holmes Beach last spring, a section of the island. Spiritual segregation wasn't completely erased from everyday life at this point, though it wasn't nearly as bad as in the Deep South. Still, it wasn't every day you saw a bunch of brothers chilling out on the beach in a white neighborhood. On the drive to the party, Demery told me about his brother Art, who was in the Royal system. He's a fireballer who hurt his arm and was trying to recover for next season. Cruising over the thin bridge connecting Bradenton to Anna Maria Island, it felt like us young fellows were entering a new realm of existence. The buccos made sure that as long as we were eating our meals together and some of us were sleeping under one roof, we were a family, even if for some of us it was only a few weeks. Most of the houses on Holmes Beach were really small bungalows, one beside the other on the water. The four of us walked between the houses to gain access to the party. Most of our teammates were already there milling around with beers and bottles of pop in their hands. Children of some of the players and other families on the beach were running down the shoreline. Satch and Mello went off to talk with some of the other fellows as me and Demery took it all in. Steve Blass was cooking up a storm on the portable barbecue, grilling steaks and fish. Parkway, I heard someone yell out, and I assumed that was me. We turned around, and Willie and Doc were waving us over, drinking Stargell's famous vodka cranberry concoction called the Purple Passion. We joined the fellows, and Willie greeted me with a 5-slap. Parkway, I like that, Doc said, wearing Bermuda shorts, aviator sunglasses, and a Hawaiian shirt. That man can make anything look cool. Glad you made it, Willie said to me. Go get something to eat. Drinks are over there. This is baby brother, Doc said, introducing Demery. He's going to be with us one day, too. I hear your fastball is out of sight, Willie said. He made sure everyone felt home and important, milling through the party, taking photographs here and there with his fancy camera. We walked over to get ourselves a steak off the grill. I remember Demery looking around the party and nodding his head. Yeah, this shit ain't bad, he said. As we approached Blas at the grill, Zisk was standing in front of us with a plate. "How do you like your meat?" Blas asked him. Zisk didn't hesitate. "As raw as you can." Blas laughed and said, "Okay," and slapped that slab right on the paper plate. That was Zisk. That was the man in my way. Played for keeps in everything he did. I should have been wearing my sandals because with all the cans of beer we knocked down, you kind of had to watch where you walked. Discarded pull tabs were everywhere. Me and Demery grabbed drinks from a portable table and mixed our own screwdrivers. I looked over and saw Tom Reich holding court with Doc, Scoop, and Moosey, telling some story that had all the fellas laughing. My eyes met Tom's, and we held the glance for a moment. I didn't feel that I was ready to talk to him. It wasn't my place to enter their conversation. As much as Will and Doc opened this world to boys like Demery and me, there was an even more intimate inner circle. That wasn't for me. Not yet, anyway. With Roberto's passing and Bob Veal's departure, Willie Stargell was now the elder statesman on the team. Verdon, really Danny on the side, talked to Willie about being more of a vocal leader, and Stargell moved into that role with reservations. Willie was cautious because he knew the clubhouse, and he knew that one or two guys were uneasy with someone taking over Roberto's role so quickly. You know what? Willie was right. There were some comments about it. Willie had so much compassion for all of our feelings, and that's exactly why he should have been the team leader. And slowly he became that man. But early on, Willie just went about his business and told all of us young guys, don't get too high when you're in a groove. Don't get too low when you're in a slump. They were basic things, but he gradually evolved into our leader. And then there was Doc. When Doc Ellis walked through the clubhouse at camp, it was like this Red Sea of cool parted, and we had some smooth cats in our room. He was a suave talker, the sharpest dresser. What's that word all the young folks say now? Woke? Yeah, Doc was born woke. Doc was the big brother to me and my crew. We were all brothers, really. In 1973, Willie was the big brother we spiritually listened to. Scoop was the big brother we knew would be there when the chips were down. Sangy was the big brother we hugged and laughed with. Doc was the big brother we ran around with. The league did everything possible that spring to celebrate Roberto's life. He was fast-tracked into the Baseball Hall of Fame. The Bradenton Chamber of Commerce renamed the street in front of McKechnie Field Roberto Clemente Way. The Commissioner's Award was renamed the Roberto Clemente Award. The Major League communities showed so much reverence and class with preserving the great one's memory, but once we ran onto the field, the buccos got down to business. Johnny Bench said we were a different club without Roberto, and that the Cubs were now the team to beat in the NL East. Our first exhibition game was on March 6th. Milt was behind the plate, and Sankey was in right field. It was the first year of the designated pinch hitter, and we were in Orlando facing the Twins. Verdon complained that Larry Heil was being used as a DH against us. Minnesota won 12-4. Milt May came to play too. He hit a dinger. So did Bob Robertson. Everyone was fighting for a job, not just a job, a starting position. I didn't play that day. Next, we were in Lakeland against the Tigers, and we lost that game too. Sankey had issues with 2 fly balls as he acclimated to right field. Once we got back to Bradenton, we were pissed about being 0-2. Even in spring training, no one was happy about losing. Doc was all business. As I walked past him on the field the next morning, Doc was telling a group of reporters, I'm done messing around. Nothing else is going to be on my mind but baseball. We won the next game, but we started seeing the first signs of another problem. Our ace starting pitcher, Steve Blass, gave up 2 runs on 5 hits in 3 innings and was wild. We all called him Jackrabbit. Old Blass was one of the funniest guys in the clubhouse, got along with the brothers as well as with the white dudes. He was just a great teammate who kept us loose. Steve threw batting practice each spring, but in '73, he started nailing guys in the batter's box. We laughed it off at first, as if he meant to do that, but it didn't stop. You could see the beginnings of his issues, and guys just dealt with it. Nobody said a word. That's how much we loved Jackrabbit. Take a BP pitch in the ass for Jackrabbit. He had good velocity, great control. That's why it was such a surprise that his location was off. After a while, he stopped throwing batting practice. None of us rookies understood what happened to Blass between the NLCS and the first day of workouts. It was mind-boggling. I finally got into a game, replacing Scoop in center. I looked out behind the openings in the worn-down outfield fence at McKechnie Field. A bunch of kids from the boys' club building behind the stadium just watched us in their ripped jean shorts and white tees, checking us out the same way I did as a boy sneaking into Crosley Field. Hey, 70, that was my number in spring training, 70 over here. I tried my best to stay focused, but I heard every one of those kids, and I can't tell you how much it warmed my heart. I didn't play as much as I would have liked that spring, but I was getting hits. The team was so stacked, and Milt just kept slamming dingers. Richie Hebner was relaxed and finally hitting, but he didn't have military duty, which always interrupted his workouts in the springs. Bob Robertson was having the spring of his life, which was impressive as he was also trying to learn the nuances of left field at the same time. Willie had only one homer through the first 10 games, but it didn't matter. He was getting into shape and focusing more on the role of team ambassador in Roberto's absence. The kids loved it when Willie showed up at the boys' club, giving baseball tips or just throwing a football around. Willie wasn't as sure-handed at first base as Robertson, but Verdon was thinking long-term about Will's knees playing at Three River Stadium. Our team's fundamental play that spring continued to spiral down, though. We were 3-6 by the middle of March. It wasn't the end of the world for most teams. Things happen in games, and our organization was among the most patient and open-minded in all of baseball. But there was an expectation of all-around execution excellence to uphold, and we were playing really sloppy. We had a run where we made 3 errors in a game against the Mets and 4 against our current rivals, the Cincinnati Reds, who beat us 5-4. Jackrabbit gave up another dinger in that game. And then the Dodgers pounded on us 10-2. We made 6 errors in that game, and I was responsible for one of them in right field. After that game, once we were all inside the complex, Farm Director Pete Peterson started calling players into an office. Young players. You know what that means. STOP. Here's what you got to know. In any athletic environment, there are 2 elements to always consider: the opportunity and the politics of that opportunity. Can you do the job? Hells yeah. That's like the basic requirement, right? Do they want you to do the job? Are you the one they want to see rounding the bases, scoring the winning run? That's not always so easy to tell. Gene Clines didn't know. He was so upset, and rightly so, about not being given a real chance to start in right field after his great hitting the year before. The fellow started calling him angry because he didn't hide his frustrations. The opportunity wasn't spiritually made available to him, and the politics certainly weren't on his side. Sankey was all but given right field, and the organization wanted him to be the face of the franchise's reaction to Roberto's passing. From a pure baseball sense, the opportunity and the politics were completely in his corner. Dave Augustin was extremely well liked by the organization. Great fielder who just couldn't hit. For such an offensive-minded ball club, and especially with veteran outfielder Vic Davalillo still in the mix, he had little to no chance. Satch enjoyed a career minor league season, hitting .306 with me at Salem in '72. With the organizational focus on the rest of us for the outfield, Verdon played Satch mostly at first base. Between Robertson and Will, there really wasn't a need for a rookie at that position. Satch was smart, so he knew that and was assuming his great '72 season might fetch him a ticket to AAA Charleston. Ed Ott was still only 21 years old. Good teammate, exceeding expectations at every level of the minors, solid right fielder with a decent bat, a consistent 295 to 300 hitter. But there was just no room for another outfielder on the roster. Did Verdon want to see Zisk succeed in that role? Yeah, sure. Did Zisk feel that they felt that way? Real good question. What about me, right? I was hitting over 350 in spring, playing a respectable outfield, and getting along with all the fellas. And don't be fooled. Clubhouse fit as the tiebreaker sometimes in spring training, just like any job competition. I convinced myself that with my performance, they were going to find a spot for me. So they called Mario Mendoza in first. Yeah, he only played in single A in '72, but he had a real shot at shortstop. Gene Alley, the 2-time Gold Glove winner, was still there, second only to Willie in roster seniority. Verdon trusted him, but there was a question whether Gene could play every day. Mario was 22, a great defensive player who just couldn't hit, even though everyone talked about his clutch series against Burlington. Mario was sent to Sherbrooke. They called Satch in. He was really broken up when he came out. I slapped him on the shoulder. It's cool, I assured him. So you go down to Charleston, and we'll see you in September. Satch turned to me with this defeated look in his eyes. They're sending me to Sherbrooke, AA. Peterson told me that the organization needs to spread their depth around through all the higher teams. Augie, that was for Dave Augustin. Satch uttered a frustrated snicker. He's going to Charleston. I know it sounds unreasonable to think the Pirates would carry another first baseman, but Satch was my best friend on the team. It was not a good afternoon, and I was getting angrier by the second. I figured that once Augustin was cut, that left only me and Zisk. Richie was having a nice spring, but so was I. They knew what I could do. In my mind, me and Polacco were both ready to hold our own in the National League. I slapped the sympathetic 5 with Ron, consoling him about the demotion when Parker, one of the clubhouse boys, called over. Pete wants to see you. I know it's irrational, but I'm still furious about it. When you compete at this level, when you succeed at this level, you don't want to hear about a logjam in the outfield. You don't want to hear about seasoning or organizational depth or even you need at-bats. This is the way it's supposed to work. You get hits, you get on base, you get a spot. That's how I was rewarded through all my life in sports. I didn't need to hear what Pete was going to say. It was some variation of, we were sending you down. Another year that I'd have to wait for a chance at a sit. I walked into his office and I barely heard a word that Pete Peterson said. The meeting itself told me everything. It was like the teacher's voice in those Charlie Brown cartoons. Want, 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 Charleston. I was heading back to the minors. I got up and left Pete's office, stomped through the clubhouse exercise area, picked up a stray bat, and whipped it against a lifting bench. This got everyone's attention. Some of the guys tried to console me the way I had been handling Satch, but then the worst thing happened. Pete came out of his office and into the exercise area. Hey, Pete scolded me, it's not your time yet. It is my damn time, I said, and I proved it. I don't deserve to get cut. You kids think you know everything, Pete said in anger. You don't know why these decisions are made. Then Pete raised his hand, and for some reason, I thought he was going to hit me. I whipped his arm off my shoulder. You raise your hand to me again, I'll knock your ass out. You heard all these voices. Whoa, whoa, players getting between us, and then a louder voice took over. Dave, come on, man, let's go outside. It wasn't Willie Stargell, who was the voice of reason. It wasn't Scoop, it wasn't AC. It wasn't Jackrabbit Steve Blass. It was Doc. That's right, he was the one who calmed me down. Dressed in a t-shirt and shorts, Doc walked me onto the field and closer to the warning track so that I could chill out away from everybody else. He eased the tension with a smile and hearty laugh. You can't be doing that if you want to go to the big leagues, brother, Doc said through the tension-killing chuckle. Why's it got to be me, I replied, saying the kind of thing 21-year-old kids say. They don't want you to be an average hitter. They want you to be a superstar, Doc said. Your time is going to come. Just be cool. I found out later that Pete Peterson was telling all the beat guys that I was going to be one of the best hitters in the NL in 2 seasons, that I'd be a star by 75. He also said I had a good attitude. After this, I was calm, and Doc gave me space, walking back into the complex. I also found out later that the reason Richie Zisk didn't go down was because he was out of options. The Pirates would have had to send him through waivers, and some team definitely would have claimed his ass. I didn't know this at the time, but this was why I was set down. I still had options, and the Pirates had too many options in the outfield. It was the right decision. I packed up my equipment, nodded to some of the other fellas, nodded to Doc, who winked back as he was laughing with a couple of the boys, and walked back toward a team van headed to Pirate City. After Verdon's very public spring training pledge about preserving Willie's knees from all the home games on the turf during the season, and after playing every exhibition game in the infield, the manager reversed course before opening day. Willie started in left field. Bob Robertson got the job at first. To Bob's credit, he realized what was on the line and hit a ton of home runs in the exhibition games. His starting role was secure. Clines was the fourth outfielder, but wasn't happy with his role one bit. Jackrabbit Blass remained stuck in his pitching malaise. It was beginning to get noticed by the beat reporters. Milt May had a tremendous spring, which gave Verdon the runway to name Sangy the Pirates' opening day right fielder. Again, the politics and the opportunity. What truly upset me was that I wouldn't be the first one to keep the spirit alive for Roberto in right field. I was signed as a catcher, and what I loved most in that position was the play at the plate, being the focus of the most exciting defensive moment in baseball, how the fans rise and scream when the runner rounds third as the right fielder launches it home. Nothing in the game excited me more, and Roberto was the one who convinced me that I had the arm strength, not just to play the position, but to elevate it. Roberto pointed out the angle I needed to generate the throwing power to reach home on a fly or a short bounce. Can you imagine what it's like to stand next to one of the greatest in the world to ever play the position and have him reveal the secrets to change your life? Roberto knew, more than anyone, that I could one day replace him in right field, and there he was, handing me the keys to the kingdom. That's what hurt the most. The moment I was given to uphold his legacy was delayed another day. The minor league fellows were finishing a workout at Pirate City when I came walking down the road behind the complex. I dropped my gear near the watchtower in the center of the fields and just sat down in one of the dugouts. Everyone seemed to know to leave me alone, so many of the boys had made the spiritual walk of shame from McKechnie Field before. They all respected my space, except Demery. He came over and planted himself on the bench beside me. It was quiet for a few minutes, me looking down at the dried bubblegum and brown dirt, not wanting company, but not minding his presence either. Where are we eating tonight? He asked me. I just sighed my frustrations. I don't know, Larry. More silence. He started to speak and then stopped, as if searching in his mind for the right words to convey his thoughts. What the fuck is Maryland fried chicken anyway? He said. I drove by there with Doc yesterday. He swears by the joint. I turned to baby brother, who just wanted to engage me, and stared at him for like 10 seconds before cracking a smile. I didn't forget about the perceived organizational slight, but I did put it aside for a little while. I knew Demery wasn't coming with me to Charleston, but I sure wished that he was riding shotgun with me to West Virginia. Demery was called away for bunting instruction, and then I grabbed my gear, and I heard, "Yo, Parker." I looked over and found him slowly approaching me. Dark skin, bright, tired eyes, about 6 feet tall. a wide, shiny forehead that was slowly losing hair. No five slap, he just extended his hand. If anyone knew what I was feeling, it was him. When we get to Charleston, you're bunking with me. Charlie Boo, age 30, entering his 11th season in the minor leagues, would be my roommate in 1973 in AAA. All right, on to Charleston for Dave Parker. Hope you enjoyed some of the words from, as I mentioned, Dave, with help from Dave Jordan. The book's Cobra, A Life of Baseball and Brotherhood. I really enjoyed it so far, and I'm going to go cool off because this room is heating up in a hurry. All right, talk to you next time on Storytime.